You're listening to the Vikes Verified Podcast. Hello, Vikings Nation. We are back in the booth, episode 101 of the Vikes Verified Podcast, live from Stillwater again in Cub Studios. It is tailgating season, and Cub Foods is your go-to grocery and liquor store. Why scurry all around town picking up your game day needs when you can just go to one spot? Stop at Cub Liquor on the way out. It's a one-stop shop for everything fall tailgating season. Visit Cub Foods or cubfoods.com and support a great local company here in Minnesota. All righty, Matt. Vikings win 21-13 over the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday Night Football.
Let's go.
Moves us to 6-2. Obviously exciting. A little bit of a lull in the first half for the team. Couldn't really get anything going. Were able to come out in the second half. Jordan Addison with a tremendous catch, and then we kind of got the ball rolling from there. But a lot of interesting storylines in this game. Let's start from the top of the game. So we come in the first half. We drive right down the field. Sam Darnold with a very ill-advised throw into the end zone, double coverage, picked off. I thought the drive before that was phenomenal, about as textbook as you get. We talk every week here about how good Kevin is on the script, and he brought out that first drive script, marched us all the way down the field, and if not for a bad decision, we would have walked right down the field for 7 on the first drive of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tale of two halves, and the first half really was just us beating ourselves. That first drive, they did have a little bit of movement there, but then obviously Harrison Smith comes up with a huge fumble recovery, and then, the offense is showing that it can move the ball. Darnold throws that ill-advised throw that everyone is kind of afraid that he's going to regress to, and so that one was just a really tough first half for us, with the guy in Reichard who's been so solid. Obviously, after the game, we find out about the quad injury, but in that first half was very questionable seeing him miss 2 kicks and just had a weird feel to it. And then you had Darnold kind of have a play or two that obviously he had that fumble that got recovered for a touchdown. So there was just a lot of stuff kind of snowballing on us in the first half. And I thought I was most impressed with our ability to kind of withstand that. Like we could have easily in previous years probably gone down 17, 20 points there and just have created ourselves a huge hole to dig out from. But I really credit this defense. I think the defense was the main reason we won this game. Obviously, offense able to put up 3 touchdowns, but this defense really held the Colts to 6 points in total offense. So standout job from Brian Flores after two games where this defense kind of got criticized and people were wondering if Flores' scheme had gotten figured out. And now you see what he was able to do to this Colts defense, even with a guy in Joe Flacco being a little bit more of an aging quarterback. The way we were able to really shut them down completely, I think, speaks volumes in terms of Flores getting this unit back to where it needs to be.
Yeah, back on track, and that feels good because a lot of people wanted to bring us into the 2016 narrative where we start 5-0, come off the bye,
and
then lose it. So feels great to get back on track. Will Reichard missing the kicks was shocking, but I'm going to go ahead and attribute that to the quad injury. I unfortunately decided
injured too.
Yes, DePaula injured as well. I unfortunately decided last week I was going to cut my hair at the same time as Will Reichard.
Those clippers out.
Unfortunately, I am going to have to chop it off, but I do think I'm going to keep this mustache going, Matt. It appeared to be good luck in the second half there. So,
all right, so we're changing it from hair to mustache now. So
exactly.
You might be riding that thing out till January.
That's totally fine. Let's rip it until January.
I'm holding you to it.
But Will Reichard, known as a sniper for us all year, you knew something was up with him. And there was a footage I saw on the kickoff as well. Just didn't look comfortable. Looked like something was off, and sure enough, it is. Andrew DePaula likely going on the short-term IR with a hand injury. I did see that. Kind of saw him get up and shake the hand. Obviously, you think it's nothing major there, but Andrew should be back next month. Let's dive into Cam Robinson. Acquired from the Jaguars. Gets into town on Wednesday and only allows 2 pressures at the left tackle spot. I mean, this is an admirable performance. I don't know if I want to attribute this to him probably feeling a sense of rejuvenation, coming in and playing for a winning team, coming in and seeing what a different culture looks like. Obviously, he was a little bit disgruntled down there in Jacksonville after the benching 2 weeks ago. So Cam Robinson, shout out to him. Let's give him a quick round of applause coming in. It's impossible to fill Christian Darrisaw's role, but if he can play a brand of football similar to what he played last night the rest of the year, I feel pretty good about our offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I do think you're right. Him getting traded to a team in Jacksonville that's really falling apart to Minnesota, who's really in the thick of a playoff race, has got to be a boost for himself. But at the end of the day, you know, for somebody to get traded on a Thursday or get traded the same week and start, I think last night I heard he was the third player in history to get traded and start in the same week. So really does not, you don't see that happen a lot. And at the end of the day, you have to just be somewhat of an athlete, a dog, to go out there and, you know, trust your instincts, your athleticism, right? I mean, at the end of the day, he did not have a ton of time to learn this playbook, learn the verbiage. He's basically relying on his teammates, letting him know what to do on each play, and then letting his athleticism and instincts take over from there. So shout out to Cam. Got a game ball after as well. Looked pretty emotional. So I think he's really starting to enjoy his time here as a Viking, but then also starting to integrate himself into this locker room and culture. So I think he's going to be an interesting guy to watch throughout the season, and what a great addition from the front office, being able to go out and address that left tackle position and not leave this team short-handed. Another guy that had a great game and was somewhat under some scrutiny was Jordan Addison. Free three, some would say. He was freed. He did find the end zone. He did score 6 on one of the crazier catches I've seen in my lifetime.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Shout out to Addison. You know, obviously there's some stuff in the media of trying to portray him as certain things, and I do think he can do a better job of helping himself with the narrative of who he is as a player off the field and on the field. But what a way to go out there, silence the critics and the haters, and really just show that he is still a huge part of this offense. And there's just a clip that I released today of Kevin O'Connell and Addison talking after that touchdown, saying that is one of the best catches I've ever seen, and he did it when this team needed it. So I love seeing that confidence instilled from KLC, and I think that the sky is the limit really for Addison, especially being paired with a guy like Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, it just adds an element of having such a legitimate number 2 option. Great to see him back on track. Like I said, great back-footed throw from Darnold, too. I think that's a little bit underrated in that play.
You
but
plays like that and then plays in the red zone. You know,
yeah, had a couple Darnoldisms there
yeah.
In the middle of the game. But I think that, yeah, having Addison, getting him back confident, getting him back integrated, it's great to see, and we're going to need him all year if we want to go to the places we want to go. So shout out to Jordan Addison. Shout out to Cam Akers as well on the offensive side of the ball. 4 carries, 46 yards, 7.7 a pop there, Matt. That's about as efficient as you can get on the ground. And being able to have the ball back in our hands with an opportunity to put the game away and actually driving down the field and doing it is something that really is encouraging moving forward. I've seen a ton of Vikings games in the last few years where we have to end up relying on our defense the last drive of the game for a stop. It felt good to be on the other side of that for once, and be able to effectively run the ball, be able to effectively move the chains, and just be an offense that we know we can be when we're under the gun, when we're under pressure, put the game away, go win it. They go ahead and do that. So that was great to see. Obviously, great to see Hockenson back on the field. Kind of a quiet debut. They're integrating him back in. 3 catches, 27 yards. But the star at the tight end spot was Josh Oliver.
What a game.
The big dog, 6'5", 260, I believe. Excellent in the run blocking game. We know all about that. But he comes out, ices the game with a touchdown of his own. 6 catches for 60 yards. This guy has become a really reliable option for Sam on most of his checkdowns. He does a lot of good work in the flats for us. Reliable hands. And Josh Oliver, really impressive performance last night.
Yeah. Shout out to Oliver. Best game in purple and in his career probably. So way to step up in a big-time game. Defensively, a couple guys that stood out to me. Jonathan Grenard continues to excel in this defense.
Leading the NFL
in pressures. Pretty impressive from this guy. He has been able to come in and just consistently provide impact, whether it's through pressures, tackles. He's all over the place. So great addition, having him in purple. Harrison Smith, another guy, a Viking legend, really. But I still think this guy could play for another year, if not 2. I mean, he just looks the part.
You've got on here multiple years. You think he can play how many more?
I think he could play up to 2 more if he really wanted to. I do think he could. I don't know if that's feasible, but the way he looks out there, man, I don't think he sees it cutting off. So very impressed by Harrison just being able to consistently make plays. And my last guy is Dallas Turner. Breakout game for him, second half. He was all over the field. Nick, What were your thoughts on Dallas Turner? Is this a breakout game for him? Is this a flash in the pan? What are your thoughts?
Well, we took the training wheels off him like we've been saying for weeks. Dallas Turner is too explosive, too big, has too good a closing speed to be sitting on the sidelines, and you saw that on display. 4 pressures, like you said, all over the place. I watched him stretching with the outside zone, running step for step with Jonathan Taylor out to the edge. I mean, this guy can move. He's big, he's athletic, and I just think the more you get him in the game, the more he's going to really start to find himself as an edge rusher. So I'm very excited about Dallas Turner's development for us, and having just Grenard Van Ginkel and Dallas Turner, that just feels like an excellent trio right now, and I really like the way that these guys are producing, and it's only going to get better as Dallas continues to develop. So more of 15 on the field. We like to see it. Matt, let's go to Duke Cannon studs and duds of the week. A lot of duds last week. We got some more studs this week, and I can't wait to read them off. Duke Cannon, are you a hard worker? Then you need a soap that works just as hard as you do. Look no further than Duke Cannon and their seasonal selections, including Trophy Game, Buck Moon, and the ever-popular candy corn. A little late for that. Halloween was last week, but grab yourself Duke Cannon's big-ass brick of soap today and try it out for yourself. Climb aboard the Duke Cannon train and get the best in men's hair care, beard care, soaps, deodorant, and cologne. Check them out at dukecannon.com or at your local retailer. Truly some of the best stuff you can get. All right, Matt.
Only the best.
Moving to the Duke Cannon studs. I'm going to start with the first one. Already named him, but stepping up in primetime, Josh Oliver. A guy who is thought of as, an extension of an offensive tackle, a guy that can go out and block for our run game. Didn't necessarily expect him to be as efficient as he was in the receiving game. Not alone last night, but all season. He's put together a really nice little year here, underrated, and Josh Oliver gets our first stud of the week.
Yeah, and I will transition. I'm going to give one to Jordan Addison. He came out, scored a big-time touchdown, was really making plays when we needed it, picked up a couple big first downs for the Vikings on offense. And if he can keep playing like this and they keep targeting him, especially with Hawkinson back in the fold, this offense is going to be very, very scary.
Alrighty, and to Cam Robinson.
Dog.
Fresh from a trade from Jacksonville. Great. He gets to go back to Jacksonville this week and play his former team. You don't think that's a little bit of a motivating factor for the guy? Cam Robinson, start of the week, coming in on short notice and balling out.
And I'll flip 2 more at you. I'm actually going to go the other side of the line, and this is a guy that hasn't got a lot of recognition. That's Brian O'Neill. I think he deserves a little bit more credit than he's been given. You don't hear his name a lot, and that's a damn good thing. And he really, with the loss of Darisaw, has become the stalwart piece of this offensive line and a guy that we've always been able to rely on. So shout out to Brian. Didn't really do anything crazy last night, but I think, again, speaks to his consistency and not really getting flagged for a lot of things or being exposed in terms of pressures or sacks. And then secondly, I will follow up with Dallas Turner. I mean, like we had mentioned, second half, all over the place, dropped back in coverage, making tackles, flying after Flacco. Just good to see him kind of get unleashed by Brian Flores. So I'm hoping to see that continue.
All right, and my next one's going to be Byron Murphy Jr. I tweeted this last night, Matt. I'm done with the Byron Murphy Jr. slander from Vikings fans. This guy is a takeaway machine. You watch what he did last night on Josh Downs, basically running the route for him. He gets in trail technique, sees it's an out route, turns his head, and the ball's right in his hands. Joe Flacco expecting to hit Josh Downs on the timing out cut. Byron Murphy's right there. It's the second pick he's had in 2 weeks on that left sideline there. I think Byron Murphy is a catalyst for this defensive back room and a guy who has a knack for taking the ball away. 3 picks this year. He's tied for 6th in the NFL. 7 passes defended. He's tied for 15th there. I mean, this guy is quietly producing. And a lot of people want to talk about maybe what he can't do in run support or whatever. But, I'm going to take Byron Murphy toe-to-toe with a lot of receivers.
I like it. Let's switch over to some duds here. These are guys that maybe didn't have the best game, and this guy is not going to be on this duds list a lot, maybe the only time this season, hopefully, and that is Will Reichard. 2 missed field goals is going to land you on this list. I expect him to be much better moving forward, but with that performance, he has to be on here.
Does his quad injury in college worry you at all? 2019 supposedly tore his quad off the bone after a mishit kickoff at Alabama. Part of me is worried that this is some sort of re-aggravation. If it's the same muscle, I don't think it's a great thing, but hopefully, it's just a 1 to 2 week deal.
It's got trust in the training staff.
Yep. Next on the duds list, we're going to have a frequent visitor to the duds list.
Frequent flyer.
Number 67, Ed Ingram. But we now have a viable replacement for Ed Ingram in Dalton Reisner. How short do you think the leash is here for Ed?
As short as it could be. After watching last night, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts down Jacksonville. I've been clamoring for him to start as soon as he can. I would have threw him in last night, but maybe he's just not showing enough in practice. Not quite sure what's going on there, but can't be much worse than what Ed Ingram is putting out on the field. The graphic last night on Sunday Night Football of him being 40th out of 41 guards is just right on par with kind of what we've been saying about him all year. No, no hate against him, but at the end of the day, we got to fill a position and you got to play well. So if you're not playing well, next guy up, and that's Dalton Reisner. So time will tell on that one. To wrap up the duds here, I'm going to go ahead and put Ty Chandler on there with Akers jumping him as that RB2 as it looks like as of now. Ty has just had, he had opportunity before we traded for Akers, wasn't really able to make a play there. Or at least kind of garner that opportunity. And now with Akers in the fold, it seems like his opportunities are dwindling, unfortunately. Welcoming on to the Vikes Verified Vent Line, we have a good friend of ours, Sam Steinwan from Andover, a.k.a. Steiny. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Victory Monday, baby.
It always feels good, doesn't it? Not the cleanest victory from this team. There was a good lull of silence in U.S. Bank Stadium when the Vikings were struggling a little bit last night. Specifically in the first half, what's your opinion on where the Vikings went wrong? Obviously came out a bit flat. Maybe there was a missed face mask call or illegal contact on Sam Darnold that wasn't called. Just give me an overall rundown of the first half and kind of what you thought dug us that 7-0 hole at halftime.
Yes, appreciate it, boys. I love your guys' content and work. It's my number one source for news, so keep it up.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, first half was definitely strange. Sunday night, late night games. It's just, you never know what you're going to get sometimes, especially after a mini bye. So it just, had some unfortunate red zone. The red zone turnover with Darnold is unfortunate. But ultimately, deep down, I knew that, going into the momentum going into the second half, we were going to regroup. Kind of get reset and the full team, a full team effort in the second half, and kind of came over that little adversity that always hits football games, So very excited that we got the dub. We took care of business, but there's always stuff to clean up, as we've been usually hot in the first quarter. So it just maybe that little mini bye was a little different feeling for the team. It could be.
Yeah, I had it's funny that you said you kind of had a weird feeling it being a late Sunday game. I had told Nick actually that I had some weird vibes going into this game as well. So I usually have really good vibes. For some reason, there was just something going on in the building at the beginning that just threw me off. And then obviously we see that first half, how that goes. And I was really hoping that things were going to change in the second half. Luckily they did, but when we see Will Reichard when he's hasn't missed a kick, missed two in a row. Darnold has that really ill-advised throw in the red zone where I think he just really couldn't have seen them. I don't really have any other explanation for why he makes that throw. But yeah, just a weird feeling. But like you said, we were able to bounce back in the second, get a big-time win, and I think that was a big momentum one for us in terms of having 3 losses in a row versus getting a 6-2 and staying in that division race with the Packers and Lions.
100%, and it's just that I might have been the daylight savings, right? But yeah, those kicks with Will is, it's definitely, hopefully he's healthy with the lower injury. But
I hope, it doesn't sound great. We're gonna have to see how long that lasts. But at least there was some ailment there that probably ended up being why the kicks resulted the way that they did. I have a hard time believing that a healthy Will Reichard is just going to doink a 30-yarder off the upright. So hoping for the best with him. A lot of interesting storylines in this game, Stein. One of my favorites is obviously, a ton of anticipation for TJ Hawkinson coming back. And right when he gets back into the fold, we see a big game from Josh Oliver. Not a lot of people seeing that. 5 catches, 60 yards, and basically a game-sealing touchdown. So what do you see from Josh Oliver that you like? Other than his sheer size, I feel like he stepped up in a big way. What do you like about his game?
Yes. It seems like he's always in the right spot, and he's doing the dirty work. You can tell he's a team player. He's not always going to get the reads or the play calls that are calling his number on a hot read. but it is ultimately, he's been in the league a while, and we paid him a good amount for being a backup tight end, right?
Yeah.
But overall, it seems like he's highly ranked in like the advanced metrics, I believe. And so it's just he doesn't get all the love, but like I like that he's big and he's reliable. He doesn't, reliable like pass catcher. So he's not had a couple issues with dropping balls, but I don't think not a lot of drop passes, from him.
Yeah. Pretty sure-handed, I would say. Very physical on the sidelines, too. We throw a ton to him in the flats, and he kind of gets that extra couple yards on the sidelines there with his physicality. So next one being, I'm curious on your thoughts on the Cam Akers, Ty Chandler situation and our running back 2 role. Obviously, we saw Cam Akers come out looking pretty smooth last night. 4 carries for 46 yards. I believe he's averaging just over 7.5 a carry there. Do you see this RB2 situation as fluid through the rest of the year, kind of ride the hot hand, or do you think Ty Chandler's kind of in the doghouse now?
Yeah, it seems like Ty Chandler's definitely in the doghouse. Just because there's Cam Akers had him in and out of on the roster the last couple of years, a missed injury, so he's definitely, he knows the playbook, and it seems like it's just like a lot of coaches and teammates gravitate towards him. He's a mentally tough guy, so I really liked yesterday. Was just a perfect balance between Jones, kind of that more electric, explosive, and then Cam Akers, just kind of different change of pace, more powerful. And it was just love to see that. We need that. It's so important to have those 1-2 punch. You see, the Detroit Lions and all these top teams have 2 really top running backs. Obviously, Cam Akers isn't that, but he's shown consistently that, he brings a lot to the table, and I love that.
Yeah, I definitely would agree. Ty Chandler seems to have moved into that RB3 role. Kevin O'Connell actually spoke about Akers today, and a big reason I think that they lean towards Akers is what Kevin O'Connell's saying, that Akers has been in this system even from his Rams days. That's why Kevin O'Connell originally even traded for him last year. So I think just having a little bit understanding of not only the basics of this offense, but some of the intricacies, I think he has a better understanding of it. Therefore, this coaching staff is leaning on him, and we saw him take advantage of his opportunities. He looked really good yesterday, and if the Vikings can find a way to, like you said, have that 1-2 punch and keep Jones a little bit less of a workload, I think that's a good thing for both Aaron Jones and this Vikings team. So having Akers have a performance like that yesterday is only good news for this Vikings team, and Ty Chandler's got to be probably the best or one of the best RB3s in the league. So very happy with the state of this running back room. But with the Vikings sitting at 6-2 and the recent trade of Cam Robinson, the biggest really topic of discussion right now is a trade deadline that ends tomorrow. If you had a certain position to still address, now that we've traded for a tackle, have traded for Akers, what position, if you had to target one, what would it be?
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys the same question.
There we go. Great minds think alike.
Exactly.
You give us yours, and then I'll give you mine.
Yeah. I was going to ask the same thing about the trade deadline because it's coming up, and I think I would go to, for me, it's really tough between defensive tackle and corner. I'm assuming you guys are on the same page with that.
Correct.
But it seems like defensive tackle, for me, just to really have that line be more fully balanced and attack from the middle. I feel like we have some edge rushers right now, and Flores does such a good time designing. But if we have that, inside pass rush, I feel like that'll give the corners the ability, just a little bit extra time, obviously, to be out in zone and coverage, and ultimately just hit the defense, because I don't think we're as strong in the rush defense.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to ask you guys as well, is like, we organically haven't drafted super well in that interior. We don't have a pop-off player there right now. And it's just like, where do you guys see the future of that defensive tackle on top of, what position you guys are targeting as well?
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and say, as much as I want Levi Drake Rodriguez to be the guy in the middle, Ton of love for Draco.
Draco.
But, I totally agree with you. And Harrison Phillips is a guy who's having one of the best years of his career. I think that's undeniable. But he's also a guy who's taking a beating in the middle of the field. He plays a ton of snaps. He's already a little bit banged up with a shoulder injury. So, if that's a guy that potentially has to miss a game or two or miss a little bit of time, then you start to get in a little bit of trouble, right? So I think that depth and having a powerful backup, and we've seen some play out of Taki Taimani, the UDFA, but nothing substantial enough to say this is a secure position group. A lot of Vikings fans are obviously pushing for the Dexter Lawrence narrative, such a game wrecker in the middle for the Giants, and no denying he would come in and he'd be an elite player for us, but you also got to look beyond renting him for 9-10 games here, and what do we want to do long term? He's going to demand a top tier contract similar to the one of Christian Wilkins going to the Raiders last offseason. So those are things to consider. Me personally, I'm more in the business of adding another defensive back, particularly a corner. I want to see either Dwight McGlothern get a little bit of a shot and get to suit up in some games, maybe take some snaps, or would going and getting Marshawn Lattimore be a bad thing? I think that the Saints are going to become sellers here at the deadline. Just fired their head coach.
Yeah. They're in a terrible cap situation.
Terrible cap situation. They're looking to offload some of that. Marshawn's obviously a guy who's probably more on the back end of his production, but still has seen just about every top-tier receiver in the league. He's competitive, and I think that if we are going to bring a guy in, I would want to bring a guy in with experience and a guy that's going to be able to play for us right away, and I see Lattimore being a fit there.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off that. I think for me, if there's a guy that we're really throwing a lot of picks at or going all in for, I would go for J.C. Horn. Not only do you reunite another Gamecock with Stephon Gilmore, but Horn is 24, under contract, and obviously playing at a very high level. So, like Steiny, you had mentioned our inability to really draft at a good rate in these past few years. I think if the numbers right or in terms of compensation, getting a guy like Horn makes a lot of sense for the future of this defense. But two guys that I think might be a lot cheaper and still fill needs for this defense are two Dolphins, and that's Calais Campbell and Kendall Fuller, the cornerback. Not only would Fuller be able to help the secondary, he's more of a veteran. Again, not going to cost as much in compensation. Same thing with Campbell. He's obviously aging, but his pass rush wins are comparable to Dexter Lawrence and Vita Vea. So, I mean, adding that, mentioning how Harrison's taking on such a workload, I think Campbell could be a huge fit for this kind of a short-term rental and still able to kind of provide an impact on that interior, because I think we all can agree that we need a little bit more help there in that department.
Yeah, and when you get going against the David Montgomerys, the Jahmyr Gibbs, you got to play those guys to get through the NFC. You got to be stout against the run, and I think the Vikings are serviceable against the run. I don't think it's it ain't no Williams Wall, the run defense that Minnesota was known for so long. So, but I agree. Yeah, it would be nice to really hit on a guy in the draft, right, and get an interior guy that just has that presence and has the strength. You see Garrett Bradbury, play well all the time, except when he goes against a really powerful guy. You can see how those guys wreck the game. So what about you, Sam? Is there anyone on your mind, trade deadline, maybe a sleeper, maybe a name that we haven't named yet?
It's a great question. I definitely want I like the Lawrence with his age and potentially long term. Seem like he could really be a fit, kind of like the TJ Hawkinson. We extend him after this year, and that would he's going to be a long-term solution there in the defense. So I really want to nail down that the defensive tackle. I'm sure there's a few other big guys on some teams some teams out of contention that we can really take as a rental. And I think maybe that first round pick, it might be later into the draft, and rather having a long-term waiting a year or two for that draft pick to really prosper. Maybe you get one of these defensive tackles who's ready to go and who's still at a fine age. Obviously our cap situation is not going to, we keep losing our cap space, doesn't it feel like, with all these extensions going into next year?
Somewhat. I do think actually the nice thing is that Kwesi and this front office have done a good job in the past year or two kind of positioning themselves. So this year we're kind of in a bad situation, but I think after this year is actually what they've been setting up for the past 2-3 seasons by getting rid of Thielen, Kendricks, all of these veteran guys that were tough to see go and took a year or two for those dead contracts to kind of run through. Now next season I think is when we're really going to see that kind of transition between having the cap space that they've been aiming for and finally being off the books for all the old contracts that the previous regime kind of handed out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Sam, I'm going to end with this for you. We obviously have, the bottom barrel of the AFC South here in our next 2 games, Jacksonville and Tennessee. Who worries you more between those 2 teams? Who do you view as more of a trap game?
I do. Yeah, these are so crucial. This it's exciting to see the schedule, isn't it? Right?
Yeah,
with these,
on paper, yes.
Yeah, on paper, I would probably have to say, Florida, the Jacksonville game. It might with the heat potentially. I don't know, how that weather looks, but it's just a different
Longer
adjustment for endurance, right? And this having Trevor, he's been to the playoffs. He has Doug Peterson. He's a risky. Risk taker as a coach, and always will go for it. Obviously, now that their season is really out of it for them, and there's no aspiration, so they have nothing to lose. So I'm really that Jacksonville game, and just like they took Green Bay to overtime, right?
Yeah.
And so something that we really just have to take it, continue our game plan. Obviously, don't overlook this, and I think we'll be having one of our best performances too, with a healthier group.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't agree more. I do think we can't overlook these next 2 games, like you said. But with a healthy group starting to form, getting some guys back, I think that we can still keep this train rolling as we should with these upcoming 3 games. But as always, Steiny, we do appreciate your intel. Always welcome to hop back on the show down the line. But again, appreciate your time. And as always, SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikes, appreciate all you guys do. Love the show. We'll talk to you soon.
Let's keep rolling, baby. SKOL.
SKOL.
All right, let's move forward to our Cub Foods Captain of the Week. This is someone who doesn't wear the C on their chest, but deserve to this week. Let's start with you, Matt.
Yes, sir. And this is a guy we've mentioned a few times, Cam Robinson. How could you not vote him to be Cub Foods Captain of the Week? This guy goes from Jacksonville to Minnesota in a few-day span, starts on the football field on a primetime game, and goes and only allows 2 pressures. So shout out to Cam Robinson, man. I think he's going to be a very valuable piece for this offense, and just keep playing at that level, and we'll be good to go.
Yeah, how impressive is that? I think if you're going to do something like that on short notice, offensive tackle is a pretty good place to do it, right? I don't think anyone's going to play on 4-day notice as a linebacker, as a defensive back. At the offensive tackle position, a lot of that stuff is pretty universal, right? You know what you're doing in pass protection. It's just, can you pick up the protection calls and the verbiage, what we're calling everything. And clearly Cam Robinson is a quick learner. He really jumped the learning curve there and was able to produce on his first night in purple. My Cub Foods Captain of the Week, just talked about him. Let's talk about him again, Byron Murphy Jr., guy who's playing great football right now, and I think that he is a guy, he's like kind of our thief in the secondary. Obviously, Stephon Gilmore iced a game picking off Aaron Rodgers, but I see Byron Murphy as a little bit of a closer in the secondary. Obviously, we have Harrison Smith, who kind of closed this one out for us with 2 clutch PBUs as well. But Byron Murphy, I just think for the slander I see on him on social outlets, but from Vikings fans, when you're playing slot corner, you're playing in that nickel, you're going to have to deal with the fact of getting beat over the middle. You're going to get beat on some crossers. You're going to get beat up the seam from time to time. But I think Byron's production in terms of takeaways really offsets, him getting beat from time to time. So I can accept a few L's if he's going to keep taking the football away like he is.
Yep, couldn't agree more. It's just time for Byron to keep balling and making plays.
Let's go.
All right. Now, before we get into our next segment here, the Vikes Verified podcast is sponsored by Drip Drop. Are you feeling dehydrated? Go get yourself some Drip Drop. They are the simplicity of quick hydration with less sugars and better taste than other competitors. It's trusted by elite athletes and the U.S. military. Drip Drop offers the best hydration out there. Click the link in the podcast description to enjoy 20% off your order at dripdrop.com with code PULLTAB at checkout. Vikes Verified Podcast is sponsored by Jimmy's Dressing and Dips. The seasons are changing and the leaves are falling. I just grabbed some caramel Jimmy's dip and it was fantastic. I would highly recommend you go check out some of their dressings and dips. It is a true game changer for this fall-winter season coming up, and you can find them at your local grocery store today.
Alrighty, and next we're going to have a special guest on the show breaking down the rest of the remaining schedule for the Minnesota Vikings. Stay tuned. Alrighty, we got a special segment for you guys. We're going to be breaking down the rest of the Vikings schedule, what we see. We've got a special guest on the show, straight from the bank here. We got Taylor Streiff, and we are going to get some predictions going for you guys, tell you how we're feeling about the rest of the schedule. He's going to be our schedule consultant tonight. We're going to start with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Matt, we're going to start with you. Initial intuition on the game and a prediction.
I think we're going to come out with a win in this one. I do think this is going to be kind of a tricky game. I don't think we're going to blow them out by any means. Jaguars were just in it with the Philadelphia Eagles, so I do think it is going to be a little bit of a tight game, but this is a game that the Vikings have no reason losing, and therefore I'm going to say that we come out with the win.
And I'm going to piggyback on that, and I'm going to say we win this game as well. The Jags are a team that has just consistently underperformed, have not been known for their execution this season. They've got a quarterback who's paid a lot of money, who's struggling. They're finally starting to see some value out of Trayvon Walker, the number 1 overall pick. But I think this is a roster that is just simply inferior. And Travis Etienne expected to be a catalyst for them this year. He's now lost his job to Tank Bigsby. I think the Vikings go down to Florida, and they roll them.
I think Vikings show up in Florida, roll the Jags. It's a Cam Robinson revenge game here. I'd love to see us kind of open it up, take advantage of a team who's maybe down bad here, and kind of step on their throats a little bit and not let up off the gas, right? I don't think we've really played a full game yet this season, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to do that.
For sure, and these are good teams take care of inferior teams, right? This is a roster that just doesn't stack up with ours. We got to go in and do it, Matt. We'll move on to the Tennessee Titans next in Nashville, November 17th. This is the bottom barrel of the AFC South. These are the 2 worst teams here, Vikings, Jaguars, and Vikings, Titans. What is your intuition going down to Nashville?
My intuition is that the Vikings get a win and end up carrying their win streak to 3 games in Nashville. So, again, Titans are kind of a dumpster fire right now. Will Levis actually gets benched. Now it's Mason Rudolph. So not a whole lot of offensive firepower down there. They just traded away D-Hop. So I think they're transitioning more towards a rebuilding team. So I don't expect too much of a competition down here. But again, with the game looming with Chicago the week after, they might be looking at that divisional matchup. So never want to look too far down the schedule. But I do think that they can rattle off 2 wins against the bottom of the AFC South.
I agree, and I'm going to go win against the Titans as well. I just think Mason Rudolph, he might still be missing a screw or 2 after what Myles Garrett did to him a few seasons ago. So I don't believe in their offense really moving the ball, even though Tony Pollard has kind of been a Vikings killer in the past. But it doesn't worry me too much going down to Tennessee. Like I said, when teams get into this middle of the season grind and you realize that you're not on a good football team, you start to lose a little bit of motivation, right? You start to the playoffs aren't in sight anymore, and then you're just kind of playing for pride at that point. So I don't think this is a very motivated Titans team. I think we go down there and take care of business. Mr. Streiff.
I would agree with that. I think the Titans are right in the same boat as the Jaguars. I think that they're not really a team to be worried about. Now, I don't want to jinx us by saying that, but in general, I just think I haven't really seen anything exciting out of them all year long. Nothing that's really going to worry me. I think the quarterback play has been really subpar.
Yeah.
And I think our defense will get after him.
I'm kind of bummed out we don't get the weekly Levis content anymore because he was really producing
on
at a high level. He was producing high-level content for everyone. So now let's get down to the nitty-gritty a little bit here. We got the Chicago Bears. So we come back, division game. This one's at Soldier Field. Obviously, the Bears stretch of tough games here, losing on a Hail Mary to Jaden Daniels, and then what happened this last week as well in Arizona, kind of getting absolutely steamrolled by their rushing attack. So we get on to Chicago November 24th. Matt opens up our season series with the Bears. How do you feel on that one?
This is where I think this is a trap game. I think it's the last game of a 3-game road trip, divisional game. We historically do not play well at Soldier Field. I'm going to go ahead and say that we actually lose this game, just like what I mentioned with having the last game of a 3-game road trip, divisional matchup. Great defense that Chicago has, and if it's subpar conditions, who knows what that leads to. So I'm going to go ahead and say that we, unfortunately, take an L in Chicago.
Okay, I appreciate the honesty, and this is the thing about these division games. It's never going to be easy. You think about Vikings at Soldier Field and just the history there. We were lucky enough to go down there a couple years ago. Obviously, a game that didn't mean anything for them, but still had implications for seeding for us, and we still couldn't go in and roll these guys with a depleted roster. We ended up getting the win, but it was no blowout by any means. But yeah, we had a heck of a performance on there, specifically Taylor. Great performance at the stadium. So what are your thoughts on this Bears game?
I'm going to take the opposite of Matt here. I think we win this game, and the only reason I say that is I think our D-line will get after their O-line. I don't think their O-line's anything special. They've got a rookie quarterback. Plenty of weapons, don't get me wrong, but as Caleb Williams continues to develop, I think that there's opportunity for our defense and Brian Flores to get after them. As always, I think our offense is very capable. As long as Sam Darnold doesn't make mistakes, I think we'll win at Soldier Field.
Okay, and I'm going to jump on board with you and say we are going to win at Soldier Field as well. And I look at two factors for them. Like you said, the offensive line. This is a group that's putting out meme-worthy content as well every week. These guys are on the ground. They don't know their assignments. And I also think it's tagged with probably the worst coaching staff in the NFL, if I had to guess. Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator, really not doing any favors developing the highly touted rookie prospect in Caleb Williams, and he certainly has not been a model of efficiency this year. You look at completion percentage, the guy's running for his life half the time. Seems like DJ Moore is more interested in still having Justin Fields on the team. So I say we go down to Chicago and we take care of this one. I think that the second matchup versus the Bears, when they come back to our place, that could be a different story. We'll get there. Let's move forward to the Arizona Cardinals, Matt, that we come back home to U.S. Bank for the first time in a while after this November 3rd game against the Colts. Yeah, a month. We got the Cardinals, who just rolled the Bears at their home stadium. Obviously showed a rushing attack. They got a new pick in Marvin Harrison Jr. They got Kyler Murray, dynamic quarterback. What are your thoughts on that?
I think we get back into the win column, back at home against the Cardinals. I think we can beat this team. They are a better team this year. Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison, James Conner, Trey McBride. They've got some weapons, but defensively they don't really scare me outside of Budda Baker. So, like I said, back at the bank, I think the Vikes can win.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take the contrary here. This seems like more of a trap than any of the previous games that we mentioned. Arizona, I'm interested to see how we handle a quarterback with Kyler's mobility. You look at the games we've kind of played throughout this season. Anthony Richardson was kind of supposed to be our first big test against a dual threat quarterback. He obviously sat on the bench. I'm just interested to see how well we can contain Kyler, if we can keep him in the pocket, and more so like handling James Conner. He's a guy who's just going to get 3.5 a pop, like seemingly every carry. I see this one going down to the wire. It could go either way, but for the sake of us not going undefeated, I'm going to say that we drop this one to the Cardinals.
I'm going to have to agree with you, Nick. I think that this is more of a trap game than the Bears, solely for the fact that I think the Cardinals have been underrated for the most part. Not that they're like a superb superpower team by any means.
Nobody
but
talks about them.
They're leading their division. They beat the 49ers earlier this season. They beat the Dolphins, and they just recently beat the Bears. I think that this is a team that should be on the radar, and we're going to be coming off a 3-game road streak. I think this is more of a trap game to me.
That is a good point. 3 games on the road. All right, Matt, let's move forward to the Atlanta Falcons. This is a game that just, I'm getting a little bit fired up just sitting here even thinking about it.
It should be flexed.
Homecoming for Kirk Cousins. It should be flexed. You're absolutely right. I still think there's a chance for that, by the way that the Falcons are playing. But we've seen it. High-powered offense. He's got Drake London playing. He's got Kyle Pitts playing. He's turned Darnell Mooney into a tremendous receiver down there. Kirk seems to be operating at a high level. And after the questions of him week 1, can he plant off that Achilles? It seems like he's looked better and better each week. So Kirk Cousins coming back to the bank, Matt. First and foremost, does he get a warm welcome from this crowd, or are we going to boo him?
I think it's going to be pretty mixed, actually. There's going to be some fans that have never been Kirk lovers, in a sense that they're going to boo him. But I also think there's going to be plenty of fans that give him his flowers there. So I expect kind of a mixed reaction, but I actually expect more of a positive response than negative. But this one's probably the toughest one for me to kind of put my finger on. I think these teams are both very evenly matched. Kirk Cousins has got that Falcons team offensively moving at a pretty good rate. Defensively, they're pretty good as well. But obviously the Vikings have both sides of the ball playing at a good rate right now. So this one's tough. Oh, man. Let's see. I've already got one loss in Chicago. That would make it 2. I'm going to say we lose, which is not good.
Damn, Kirko.
Yeah, I think we lose this one.
Kirko walks in our tribe and takes over our tribe.
We're not seeing it the same, but I think he might. I don't know. This one just has a weird feeling for me on it.
Man, I agree with you, and I think the thing that worries me is I think the underrated defense of the Falcons, and one of the best offseason additions in Jesse Bates. That guy has been a top-tier safety for many years. Justin Simmons as well, the former Bronco, rounds off a great safety tandem. We know that Sam Darnold's a guy that can, maybe get lurked into throwing a couple picks against safeties that disguise coverage well. So that worries me a bit. A.J. Terrell's a good corner as well. He's going to be toe-to-toe with Justin Jefferson. But just looking at how well I think they're playing as a unit right now, and Raheem Morris has them really cohesive. It seems like the chemistry's solid. They're embracing Kirk as the guy, where I was a little bit worried that, people would be pushing for Penix, but there's none of that because Kirk has put a product on the field where you can't argue that. So to me, I think the Falcons are a team that matches up really well against us, and I have a feeling that this could be a potential playoff matchup when we get to that point. But I'm going to go ahead and say we win in a nail-biter, and we give Kirk Cousins a bit of a taste of his own medicine when he
What if Darnold hit a you like that after he beat Kirk?
Ooh, that would be special.
Epic.
That would be
That would be
special.
great.
All right, what are you thinking, Falcons?
I'm going to have to agree with you, Nick. I think it's going to be a nail-biter game. I think we come out with a lot of energy, obviously playing against our former quarterback here. I also think coming off what I predict a loss against the Cardinals, that we'll have a little,
little
tap
chip
in our step. I think, to Matt's point, I disagree with positive energy. I think there's a lot more Kirk haters out there in the fan base than there are people who like Kirk in this fan base. So I think there'll be a lot of boos. I think that there will be a lot of, not animosity, but, like get after Kirk type energy. And I think that Brian Flores will dial that up. As long as, all things are, considered here, I think if we're healthy going into this game, I think we win the game.
Yeah.
It'll be a close game, but it like you said, I think this will be a great game.
Yeah, and Bijan Robinson as well. That backfield, we talk about having two good running backs. Him and Tyler Algier have become great complements for each other. That's a run game that can't be messed with. It's a good offensive line as well. But I kind of agree with you. I think that the Kirk haters are going to rise in U.S. Bank when he walks back in that building. And you can kind of look at, side to side, him and Darnold's stats right now. Kirk's played one more game because we had the bye. Very, very comparable. And then you look at the contracts. And obviously we get a hell of a lot better value with Sam Darnold. So I think fans were slighted by maybe the way that Kirk handled his business decisions.
I think on top of that, like I myself, like wasn't necessarily a big Kirk Cousins guy right out the gate, but obviously he was our quarterback, right? So I got on board with that, right? And I supported that all the way till the end. And for me, now that he's gone, I feel like I can really show my true colors again. And I was never really like, this guy's going to take us to the Super Bowl type. Sure, he was going to fill the role to a high level, but ultimately I never really was a really big believer in Kirk Cousins. So I think there's a lot of fans that probably feel similarly, like, hey, he's our quarterback, we have his back. But ultimately, deep down, they're like, we need somebody who's going to take us to the promised land.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch Sam get out of some of those pressure situations that Kirk wouldn't have. So that's going to be a showdown for sure at the bank. Let's move forward. This one's at home against the Bears. I believe this is Monday Night Football, correct, Matt? 7 p.m.
Yes, it is.
December 16th against the Bears. I like us in Monday Night Football. I'm going to go ahead and just be blunt here. I think that we steamroll them at this point. I think the Bears are going to be at a point where they see themselves so far behind in the NFC North that they're starting to see the bigger picture, and the chemistry is going to kind of be out the window at that point if they don't turn things around. So I think we steamroll them on December 16th.
You know what else this game is, right?
What's that?
Winter Whiteout.
Ooh, that's going to be
should be called the Winter Wipeout because we are going to wipe the Bears on the freaking floor of U.S. Bank. So we're coming in. I said we lose in Chicago, but we get a win in Minnesota. We ain't losing our house. No. This is our house. And honestly, I think, like you said, Nick, I think this is one where we make a statement. The crowd behind us, the Winter Whiteout jerseys on, there's a lot of good energy leading into that game, and I think it's one that they can win handily.
Absolutely, Taylor.
I would agree with you, Matt. I think we'll wipe the floor with them. I think that, coming into U.S. Bank is tough for anybody. I mean, clearly seen in the Lions game recently, I think they're the best team in the NFL right now. We had plenty of opportunities to win that game. came right down to the very end. So that being said, I think, anybody comes into our house for the most part, we should be able to get after them.
Let's go. We're taking care of business on the 16th. This next game, a little bit of PTSD involved here. Vikings going back to Seattle. I just got a feeling that Seattle's going to wear those neon greens this game as well. But we go to Seattle. We'll see how the Seahawks are looking this point in the season. Kind of middle of the road right now. DK Metcalf banged up, their best receiver. Kenneth Walker a little bit banged up as well. But this is, no joke. We know what Seattle is based off playing them in the past. Always a team with a tough defense, a team with a seasoned quarterback in Geno Smith. But once again, like you look at former Seahawks teams that we'd lost to in Seattle or lost to at home, I see this as a weaker roster than those teams. I don't think this is the same Seahawks that we were seeing back in the days of prime Russell Wilson. I think we go out to the West Coast and we take care of business here against Seattle.
Yeah, if this was Pete Carroll still leading the team, I actually would probably lean Seattle, especially being on the road. But first-year head coach, offense, just team as a whole, just not really operating as well as we're kind of accustomed to seeing Seattle play. So for that reason, I do think the Vikings go into Seattle and get a big road win.
I love it.
Matt, I'd have to agree with that. The Seattle Seahawks have only won 2 games at home this season. So I think that,
what
obviously,
to the 12th man?
Right? I think that there's a lot of fake energy over there, fake news. So I think in general we go in there, finish the season out strong. I think this is one of our last road games. So, that being said, I think we go in there and take care of business.
I am all for that. So this is the part of the season where if you're looking at how the NFC North is shaking out so far, this could be everything here. Packers, Lions to end the season. We got the Packers at home on December 29th, and then we go to Detroit for the last game of the season. So there's no telling where things will be at. We could be in a position where, the seed's locked in and it doesn't mean much. We might see Nick Mullins, type of deal if Detroit keeps rolling the way they are. So let's start with the Packers at home. I'm going to say that we're going to split these games 1-1, and I'm going to say that we are going to drop the one against the Packers at home. For whatever reason, I still have nightmares about New Year's Eve against the Packers last
PTSD.
year. With Jordan Love just taking the top off, Jaden Reed popping out, Bo Melton 115 yards. I wanted to throw up at halftime. But Packers on December 29th, I'm going to go ahead and say we drop this one.
Yeah, I had the same thought process. I do think we split these last 2 games. Not sure how it's going to go one way or another, but I do think that there is a decent chance with how well the Lions are playing. If we can't keep that gap close enough, I do think that they could potentially pull away with the division, therefore leading into that last week, maybe not having all their starters in. So with that being said, and kind of just us and the Packers kind of always splitting the series, I'm going to have to say that we lose this one. Unfortunately, I wish it worked the other way around where maybe we lost in the beginning of the season and won this one at the end. But regardless, I do think that we maybe come up on the short side here, and it's a tough one. You never want to lose to Green Bay.
Never. How you feeling, Taylor? December 29th.
I'm thinking Packers at home. We took it to them at Lambeau. I think coming into our house is even more difficult, an uphill task for them. I think we beat them. I don't care if Nick Mullins is the quarterback or Sam Darnold's the quarterback. I'm taking the W there against the Packers. I think we've got their number this year, and I think that that's the case here. So.
Okay, and moving into Detroit, I still got a bad taste in my mouth from the game. This kind of started the Dan Campbell era, I think. Their comeback win on, I guess you remember Cam Dantzler in the end zone. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I believe, wins that game for them. And we have not fared well against the Lions the last 3 or 4 years. I believe we've won 1 time in the last 4 years. I mean, this is clearly an ascending franchise. They have good leadership in place. I like what their GM's done in terms of acquisitions. They've built a culture of being tough, being gritty, biting your kneecaps off, that kind of thing. So this is a team that's not to be trifled with, but I think if the chips are on the table here for Minnesota, I'm in the business of Kevin O'Connell out-coaching Dan Campbell and making his, I will call it, greediness backfire on him. This is a guy that, likes to let it hang. He likes to be the bigger man, try to take more risks, fake a punt, fake a field goal. He gets reckless at times, and I think this is a game where we take advantage of that in Ford Field, and we silence that home crowd and send them into the playoffs on a bit of a sour note.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the same sentiment of us splitting these last 2 games. I do think that whether it takes an inspired performance, like you said, with all the tables on the line, or all the chips on the table, I should say, or this could also, like I had mentioned previously, be a game where the Lions don't have all their starters in. So I do think that this is one where the Vikings do get a win in the last week of the season.
I'm going to take the opposite stance of Matt there. I think at this point, unless it's coming down to the wire, like, hey, this is for the NFC North, I think at that point the playoff picture is pretty clear. I think even if we do have everybody in, they came into our house, and to Nick's point, Dan Campbell got greedy in that game right out the gate, and they still found a way to beat us. So I think in general, going into Ford Field, I see that being probably the most difficult game on our entire schedule this year. And that being said, I think we take the L.
Okay. Well, I think we can, for the most part, agree that we're all kind of in the 11-6, 12-5,
definitely right in the range,
13-4 range on it. That would be impressive. But we think that this is good enough to be a playoff team. I've been saying it since before the season. It was kind of embarrassing, the line that they gave us in Vegas in terms of total wins. I couldn't believe that. But we're kind of rolling as a unit as long as we can keep, like I said, our cornerstone four, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, and Aaron Jones healthy. I think it's a team that can beat a majority of teams in the National Football League. We appreciate your guest appearance tonight here, Taylor.
Insight.
Bringing in a little bit of a fresh perspective on the Vikings rest of the season. It's always good to mix in a couple alternate perspectives. Matt, you got any closing statements for Mr. Streiff?
Always a pleasure having Streiff on here and getting a good perspective on the NFL and what's to come for this Vikings schedule. So those are our predictions. We're going to see how it all shakes out, but only time will tell.
SKOL Vikes.
SKOL Vikes, baby. I appreciate you guys having me on. You guys got a good thing going here, and
yes,
it's been a great thing. So
let's keep it moving.
See the future.
Let's keep it moving.
Much appreciated. All right, with the Vikings coming off a big-time primetime win against the Colts, we are now heading into Jacksonville to face off against the Jaguars at noon. This is the first of 3 road games here. Nick, overall thoughts on this matchup down in Florida?
I think this is one that we got to jump on them early. The one thing that worries me in this game, if we have special teams uncertainty, if Will Reichard's not in this game, Andrew DePaula not in this game, a lot of the time they say when you're playing an inferior team, a way that you can mess that game up is in special teams. I'm hoping that we can remain solid. I'm very interested to see who we go and get. I have a feeling that Will Reichard's not going to kick for us this week. Who are some realistic options, do you think? John Parker Romo was a preseason guy for us. Do you see anyone coming back into the fold that we're familiar with?
May not be super familiar, but we do have some ties, and that is actually Daniel Carlson's brother, Anders Carlson. Had a recent stint with the 49ers, was able to nail some kicks. I would not hate bringing him into the fold. Some other names to kind of keep an eye on with some ties here. Greg Joseph, not the most probably popular name on the list, but one who has some experience here. We all know the Greg Joseph kind of what you get with them, but last I had seen, he was on the Packers, and I've not
he's
seen
on the
him.
Giants. He's a starter for the Giants right now.
All right, scratch that. We're going to keep it moving then. No Greg Joseph. I'm going to say my top pick would be Anders Carlson.
Okay, I would agree with that. Bring him back, get some redemption.
It's not great options, though.
Get some redemption for the Carlson name. Something that worries me a little more is long snapper. How do we address that? Is there another guy on the team that can long snap potentially?
No,
you got to go get a specialist, correct?
You bring in a guy that's done it before, who's just sitting around on his couch and can do the one thing that a long snapper needs to do. So I mean, it's not going to be a long-term IR stint for Andrew DePaula. It sounds like maybe 2 to 3 weeks, but you do have to get a guy who can fill that role for now, and I think there are enough guys out there where you can get them. None of them are going to be flashy, but they don't need to be.
Yeah, so we got to piece together that room and find a way for them to be sharp. The good thing is we still got Ryan Wright holding the kicks, so that's our one bit of continuity that we can hold on to. In terms of the Jaguars, you stop them on the ground. I don't know if Brian Thomas is going to play this week. I do not think so. But this is a team that Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby.
Take out the tank.
Both can be weapons, but I think Trevor Lawrence is a guy that's apt to turning the ball over a little bit, and I think that seeing our defensive fronts, seeing how we line up, and the way we disguise coverage, I think we confuse him enough to the point where we're able to turn the ball over 2-3 times.
Yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence might be one of the most overpaid quarterbacks in the league currently with how he's performing, and I have never been a huge fan of Trevor, is it Travis Etienne or Trevor? I forget.
Travis.
With the brothers.
Travis.
Never been a huge fan of Travis Etienne. No denying kind of his athleticism, but I don't think he's been able to put it all together in a season and stay healthy. I actually like Tank Bigsby more. So, like you had mentioned, let's shut down this run game, put a ton of pressure on Trevor Lawrence, and really try to have him beat us through the air, because I think we'll see this is a multi-interception game, I think, with a guy in Trevor Lawrence who does have a tendency to give the ball up. So very excited to see what this defense does. And on the offensive side of the ball, we do have a revenge game, and that is Cam Robinson going back to stick it to Doug Peterson and the Jaguars for letting them go and showing them that, hey, I got the better side of the deal. I'm on a playoff contending team, and I'm going to stick it to you and give you a loss.
Right, and the good news is he practiced so much against Trayvon Walker, their best edge rusher. He probably knows a little bit about his game. He knows what he likes to go to, so hopefully he can come in there and take care of business against his former team. All right, Matt, game time picks of the week. I'm going to start with you. Your best bet of the week. Let's hear it.
Let's go. I'm getting a little spicy with this one. This one's getting a little bit more outside the box, and that is what I just mentioned, Trevor Lawrence having a tendency to give the ball away. I think this is a game that the Vikings defense not only get a turnover, but find the end zone. Mm-hmm. This is my pick. Anytime defensive touchdown for the Vikings.
If you had to bet on it, who is it?
If I had to bet on one, I am going to go with Cam Bynum.
Okay, a little pick 6 for Cam Bynum. He was close. He got robbed of that one on a flag last week, so I could see that as well. My game time pick of the week is going to be a Dallas Turner sack. You just see the way that he's ascending. We've kind of let him off the leash, turned him up a little bit this last week. 4 pressures in the game. You saw him week 1 against the Giants, got his first career sack against Daniel Jones. Obviously, they're missing Cam Robinson now at left tackle, a little bit of a hole there. I think Dallas Turner takes advantage, and we see a little bit of a breakout game for him. 1+ sacks. I believe his line will probably be 0.25 for the sacks, so I'm going to say go ahead and hammer that. I think Dallas Turner gets home this week. In terms of score predictions, I've got a close one. I've got the Vikings 28. I've got the Jags 24. I think this is going to be a tight one. For whatever reason, Vikings football, we see a lot of these games where we either grab an early lead and then kind of give it up in the second half. For some reason, I think it's going to be close at home. They're obviously fighting for their season. If they lose this week, it's pretty much over. It already is pretty much over, but I think that the Vikings go down to Florida and get the ball back in their possession and do the same thing we did this last week and put the game away. We lead that game-winning drive. We're able to run the clock, and we're able to move the chains enough to a point where we just put them away, nail in the coffin. Yeah,
I do think that this is going to be a tighter matchup. Jags are competing right now. They don't have the best team, but being at home, I think that they're going to keep things close. I'm going to go with the final score of Vikings 24, Jags 20. I do think that we will hopefully lead this game throughout the majority of it, but again, just knowing the Vikings, I think things are going to kind of come down to the fourth quarter and just really going to be on the defense to stand on their toes and make a stand again.
You know what they say, Matt? The cream rises to the top. Well, I truly believe that the Vikings are the cream.
Let's go.
And we're on our way to the top. You look at the schedule on paper, it's very encouraging. Not saying we're going to win out by any means. We're going to have some trap games. We're going to have some adversity. But you look at who we can be and who we should be against our opponents, and I like our chances. I think we got good culture here. Obviously, have good coaching. And we got great players to match that. So it's a great time to jump on the bandwagon. If you're not yet a Minnesota Vikings fan, maybe you should look at it. My Cowboys fans around the world, maybe you're looking at another team to cheer for this year after you're out of the race. Why not jump on the purple train?
Yes, sir. Things are heating up in Minnesota. Stay tuned with us as we'll keep you all the updates throughout the rest of the season. And let's get into Jacksonville and get another W.
This is episode 101 of the Vikes Verified podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and SKOL Vikings.
SKOL.
You're listening to the Vikes Verified podcast.